there were, as Michael says, ultimately he's asking 66 galaxies to be examined through the system, 10 universes or 10 galaxies. He named them off, our parts of our study. And seems to me like I might ask Michael to begin by examining the galaxies, maybe 1 hour and one galaxy, or maybe we won't even get all the teaching about one particular galaxy. I don't know. He's going to flow it through that way. But to kind of recap from before, I hope I can pronounce some of these correctly. Astellas was a universe or a galaxy. We'll just use those words interchangeably that Archangel Michael brought forth. Persimmon was or is another. Herculon was another. Hilarion was another. Damascus, another. Platoria, another. Orion, many of you know of some of these. Damascus, I have no idea. Orion, certainly Orion's belt as a young girl, even looking up the stars. So Orion is another galaxy. Jupiterian, there is, right now in the ascension energy, much of the purpose of connecting with these other interplanetary galaxies is for the healing properties and energies that they can share with us, so that we can help heal ourselves and even more fully heal our planet and heal galactically, you might say. So Jupiter, I imagine Jupiterian, probably that. Celestine, new to me. Some of you may know these words or planetary systems already. And 10 was Dominion. And again, Michael's insight, teaching, was that Dominion means being in total oneness. Certainly there's other words for total oneness. Sometimes it's ascension, enlightenment. Could be lots of different words. But in terms of the galaxies, the universes, Dominion was 10. That's what he asked us to start by looking at. So I am going to get ready to get started here. Just invoke him by his name. Try to, again, share as much as all of our time here allows, and make an announcement of some type if you want to get involved. These other 28 hours or so of the system, by all means, I welcome you, and that will be made available soon. Like anything, I don't want to start it and not complete something. So focus, dedication, and passion are key frequencies to have in our lives. So let me just invoke him. Michael, if you could guide us here, keep teaching us your wisdom. There are others that you'd like to be the wisdom teachers. Would that be an okay place to start this class with examining, I just made that word up, examining Astellas as a universe or galaxy, or would you like to start with another one? How could you guide us, please? All right, this is what I'm starting to hear. Each galaxy, by the way, will be, in my mind, if our hearts are open to it, about 2 to 3 hours of teaching. So we definitely do need to sort of dig into the matter. I'm very excited and humbled by those of you that have already been using the words in your thinking and using the words in your writing. We see it, we know it. It's not as though everyone has just sort of come to this since the last time we convened. Certainly there are cultures in different parts of the world that know much about this system in a way, although I feel as though bits and pieces have been shared with your planet, not in totality, which I intend to do through her at this time. So we could have dealer's choice. That would be me, Michael, saying I'm the dealer. Pick one of the galaxies, or if those that are listening, I am here to be of service. If there's a particular universe or galaxy that may speak to the collective group, we certainly can begin there. There is no sort of ranking order. There's certainly not an alphabetical order, thank you, in the sharing that we'd like to bring forth. So in this pause of space, allowing our hearts and minds to come together, if we could once again just collect ourselves in knowing that some of the things that may be shared with you might be stretching you, questioning you, make you uncomfortable. Others, as I've heard and known, their souls have said, can you speed up the teaching? We know this. Get to it. Get deeper. Get more. Get so on. So wherever you may be in the spectrum, I'll try to take a more moderate pace this time. If there are no particular requests coming in for what order we'll examine the universes, let's just go with Austulus. Austulus. My earthly spelling of it would be pretty much as you might be thinking. If you're taking notes or you choose to do so, Ostalas. With that being stated, here's where I'd like to continue. First of all, just like reading a book, if you read a book and then you put the book aside and you're ready to read chapter 2, and it's been a while since you've read chapter 1, some refreshing might be in order. It will not take very long in that regard, but as she is doing collectively for us, there are going to be 66 galaxies that will be examined through our time spent understanding the necessity in some ways for newness, as there are new souls, there are new DNA strands, there are new DNA structures, there are new plants and animals, there are new rocks, there's new gems coming from other of these regions. They have their own purpose in that. So newness and creation is something that's really always been prevalent or present, but it's sort of, again, as I say in many times, just as with the star healing intergalactic system, you can choose to keep reading an old textbook or you can pick up a new one. So wherever you may stay with this in your hearts and minds, know that all is well. I myself am finding it a wonderful journey to have so many of you witnessing the importance of the time you're living in by showing up, listening, spreading the truth, spreading the wisdom, spreading it as I see it. Again, I myself, there might be some things I don't see clearly. I myself, of course, am not even a very high-ranking angel. There may be times where you hear me pause and invoke others of higher counsel, and in fact, we're going to start that way now. I'd like to invoke the counsel of Austulus, perhaps describe their counsel. They may be energetically present. They may flow through her voice as being tools of teaching. There are multiple counsels, perhaps just a moment explaining counsels. To enlighten some of you, there are multiple counsels, as we call them, in all of creation. There is certainly more than the Ascended Master realm. There are counsels for every galaxy, and some galaxies have multiple counsels. The Council of Austulus, if I may share this with everyone, has a council of 12 council members, you might say, and the council members were and are what we'd call high vibrational light beings that were selected for the position of standing in a place of mastery. The council, how does a council member differ from, let's say, one ascended master? Let's say Mother Mary. How does the council differ? Can an ascended master be part of a council? Well, they certainly can. In what we're doing here in our time together, it does not look and appear to me at this time that the Council of Austulus has any what you might call ascended masters that many of you on Earth may be familiar with. Some of these other galaxies that we will be examining, they do have a few council members that are also sharing their council on planet Earth. So if it's helpful to understand this reference to the word council, every planetary system, as I say, as I come to know it, has at least one council. It's not a whole lot different in your mind than, in your own world. There's council members, there's councils for everything, and council just means a collective. The fact that the number 12 is here represents total oneness. You might say, well, I suppose all of these other galaxies that we're going to be examining, Damascus, Jupiterian and Celestine and all the rest, they have 12 too then. If you're saying 12 is the number of oneness, and I would say some do, some don't. There's other more complex numbers that represent the council members of some of these others. So I've sort of choosing to start our teaching here with Astellas, because it's he's saying, frankly, in some ways more understandable and less complex than some of the other galaxy teachings that we'll be building toward. Yes, there's a truth. There's not a real building crescendo. In other words, everything is glorious in their own right. But in terms of a complex number of council members, or the complexity of who make up the council, that number will change. And there are, as I say, one of the more complex galaxies in understanding, I feel, is the Celestine galaxy, the Herculon galaxy. Perhaps if I had to weigh in with an opinion, I might say the Platoria. So, without getting too far astray from the teaching, back to Astellas, the council members of 12. They are high beings of light. They reside at a frequency that's about 18 megahertz higher than anything on Earth. So if you want to equate a frequency with sound or a electronic vibration, or just imagine in your mind beings of light that have many things you say in terms of qualities that human beings do not yet have. But the purpose of the council, rather than describing the council, although physically, if it moves your hearts and minds, we could spend some time describing what the council looks like. But they stand in union in their purpose, and and they stand in unity in their frequency, in knowing that part of their purpose in the light world, in the light federation, like all these other galaxies, 66 in total, is to sort of wave their hand, if you can imagine, and say, here we are, sort of like being at a baseball game, Michael's saying, and you can either sit behind home plate, that's your Earth, or you can see on the bleachers, on the nosebleed section. Okay, so all of these galaxies, you might say, are in the nosebleed section. There might be some usefulness in sharing everyone how I see them in terms of light years from your planet, just to kind of lay out something. I think I might move to that now. If you think about your Earth as like the middle of a pond, or where the first rock, a starting place, certainly different perspectives would say, well, Earth was born later, but we will address this in our teaching before it's complete. But if your minds would like to think about the closest galaxies as I see them, it might be useful for your visual minds that these rings of galaxies go outward and outward and outward. So the number of light years is a reference or a term that I might be using. How many light years away from planet Earth is this galaxy, or is this galaxy, and so on and so forth. So for your knowingness, I'm choosing Astellas to begin our teaching, not only because there are some sort of easier concepts to layer upon, but there also that galaxy, also as I see it, is one of the ones that is closest in light frequency. Light frequency can also be light years. So we'll use those words interchangeably, light frequencies and light years. For those of you that have more of a scientific or very curious mind about this, how many light years away is the Astellas universe as I see it? About 400 to 450 light years away from planet Earth. So with that statement, you may wonder, like, well, Angel, can't you tell us, why did you give us a range, 400 to 450? And that is partly because light Earth energy, or light years away, the way that light years are being measured, that's changing too. Everything is sort of being reorganized in all of creation, largely as a result of Mother Earth rising up. So if you can think about it this way, when Mother Earth was spent so many thousands of years in her depleted state of being, you might say she was, you can visualize this. I think visualizing is useful if numbers are not your thing. So if you could visualize that Mother Earth, you have a string of, he's saying, let's say you have a string of donuts on a string, and you're holding all these galaxies or donuts. And one donut is very dense. That would have been Earth. And so Earth was sort of dragging down your line of donuts, Michael's saying, but she's not there in that place anymore, in the galactic total oneness that we're talking about. So that affected and continues to affect how we view light years. Some of that statement, many scientists, of course, know this. Many of your own minds might know this, but light years, as I say, that's why the range is put in there, because the way that light years from Earth is our starting point here, that will vary, and it is varying right now. The speed of light, you might say, that's being upgraded also. As Mother Earth regained her power and the crystalline cores are spinning faster, and she was sort of, think of your mother as being reunited with all of her cousins. One cousin is Damascus, one cousin is Herculon, and so on. So in that reunion, time also is a continuum, and time, light years is a reference to time. Everything is speeded up because, to a large degree, I would say, like a little disclaimer, he's saying, but to a large degree because the vibration of Mother Earth is lighter. So that in our visual of the string of donuts hanging downward, now can imagine things most likely being very close to vibrationally equal. So I hope I haven't lost too many of you, and just continuing on about that's with my intent why that number range was shared, 400 to 450 light years from Earth. So let's examine more about Astrolus. Again, as we talked about, let's call it Chapter 1, and this is Chapter 2. What is the need and the reason for an astrology-astronomy system? It's combining both. That's why for now we're using both conceptual things on Earth. Why is there a desire and a need for this knowledge? Partly, as I say, I've been called upon by higher council to continue to open up the windows that many of you already know about, that there is life in other galaxies, and as Mother Earth has reached a place where she's no longer the densest planetary system, it's sort of like it's an old family reunion. Think about it this way. It's an old family reunion. So why not discover who members of your family are? All of these universes and galaxies that I've mentioned have their own, some of them have their own government. Some of them, of course, have their own races of light beings. Some of them are humanoid. Some of them are not at all. None of them are, as I would say, outside of light and in darkness, which probably prompts a question in your mind, which would say then, well, so the angel, are you only telling us that you've picked these 10 universes that are in the light and there are no galaxies where there's some work being done with the light beings that live on there? And I'd say, yes, there are. They're not part of this 10. They fall somewhere further in line with number 20 to the number 25 or 26 galaxies in our exploration of 66. I do hope that, again, that number 66 doesn't bog anyone down. I do not feel as though teaching of anything, as teaching goes, needs to be a tedious teaching. So I will try my very best to make teaching in a way that is not tedious. So, for example, looking at when we get to the teaching from the 50th to the 55th galaxy, there's not really a name. We'll talk about conceptually, visually too, because the minds can imagine what that might look like. 55 to 60, so there'll be a grouping. Not all of the galaxies, then, as I'm sharing, do I intend to present individually. He said we might be here forever and ever and a day if that were the case, and there's no reason for that as I see it, because they're more cohesive in a way. So some of these other universes outside of 10, again, from about 25 onward, we'll talk about sort of grouping them all together. So, because there is so much to share, and knowledge is always, everything is always growing, changing, shifting, and so I feel that will be the way to best present this to everyone. So moving along in our time here, talking about Astrolus. I've placed in your minds, hopefully, sort of, at least a number and some instruction in your mind about how far away from Earth the system is. You might find it useful. In other words, I feel as though it is going to be helpful to kind of place out or, mark out where these universes are, and then we'll recircle around. We'll talk about them in full, and then we'll recircle around and talk about what's the purpose of connecting with them. We did some of that already in our teaching, but we'll go about it in a different way. So first, it's sort of like this. I'd like to present some other characteristics. That might be a word that will help your minds understand my intent, Michael said, to understand these galaxies. Some type of information so that when we talk about why and how a person might connect with the Astrolus galaxy for your own personal healing, yes, in some cases, for some healing of the species that we spoke briefly about in the inner world, inner Earth, and also there is still work to be done from family member to family member. If you use this analogy in your minds, friends, like a family reunion, some of you might be thinking about your own Earth families and know about how those reunions can be. Some of you might be smiling quite widely, and others of you might be cringing. It's sort of like a high school reunion, sort of. So there are some reasons in bringing all these particular galaxies together, you're knowing, because there's still things that are not what you might say perfect between one another. In other words, if I said to you that the council members of Astrolus they have a job to do, and they are not always in total oneness frequency with the council that exists, let's say, on Persimmon. So by this study, we do feel as though everyone on Earth, or anyone on Earth, or 10 people on Earth can help the family reunion become one. If I may continue, he's saying. So imagine in your minds 12 councils. The galaxy of Astrolus, what does it look like? You've identified how far away it is from us. What does it look like? It has, as I come to know it, 6 planets, 5 star systems in the galaxy, 45 smaller planets that for now we're going to call asteroid-like, if that's okay with everyone, asteroid-like. There's 45. The 6 planets of this particular galaxy align themselves in the shape of a smile. He's saying they do. So should be easy to imagine. Maybe it'll make you smile when you think of this particular galaxy. I think it probably will be useful to kind of, have a memory jogger or a trigger in one's mind. Each of these galaxies do have something about them that I think will provoke that in your visual minds. So Austerlus you could think about as 6 planets in a smile shape. There are no galaxies that we're going to be examining in our teaching that have a frown. That's Michael's joke, I guess. So with that being said, maybe you have a pen and paper in your hand and you find that you like to draw along with what I'm sharing. Many of you are visual learners. You're not so much auditory learners, and perhaps at some point in our discovery there will be pictures and pictograms and so on that will bring this teaching system more to light, to such vivid light, because color very much is something that can help make things real in a human being's mind. And also they do have colors. Of course, your own planet has color. But first, I'd like to talk about the significance and the way that these planets align, and sort of maybe talk about their size briefly. Anyway, very simply. I'm not going to go into diameters of this, that, or the other. I feel as though that's not the true meaning or purpose of what my intent here is today. But the first, if we're visualizing a smile of planets, planetary systems in a galaxy, the 3 of the planets, the first 3 planets are of the same size. In relationship to Earth, they are about twice the size of your Earth. The other 3 planets that make up this smile shape in the cosmos, they are of a smaller size, and they more closely approximate the size of your Earth. In describing the universe and the planets that reside or make up part of that galaxy, that's the size. Perhaps I'll touch on the colors of the planets, knowing that they're not really simply solid orange or something of this nature, but you might find it interesting in your hearts and minds. Some of these galaxies that we will be examining have water. Many of them have water. Some do not. Some are more desert-like. So we'll talk more about maybe the topography or that in a moment. But let's get the colors set forth. So the first 3 planets that are of the same size as I see it are kind of a greenish yellow. And the greenish yellow has a frequency that, if I were to assign a number to it, a harmonic code, to help those of you that are, in that frame reference of alchemy, the harmonic code for the color that galaxy exhibits is, I'm going to break it down and make it simpler, Michael's saying, and the number code would be 99 space, and then underneath the 9s, 77. Let's just save that for later, because the number codes can be used to study the systems. Like, well, how am I going to study the systems? I said we're going to take this one piece at a time, just like anything, one piece at a time. So that's the harmonic code that can be assigned to these first 3. The other 3 planets of a smaller size in this particular galaxy, they too have a harmonic code, and their harmonic code is 6, 6, left to right, written in your earth plane like 6, 6, Michael's saying. And then underneath the 6, 6, there's a 9 and there's a 5. So 6, 6, 9, 5, that's a harmonic code for the others. So if you, even if when we're finished immediately here, he's saying, if some of you wanted to connect energetically with the Austerlus galaxy or the planets within that galaxy, you could be drawing or writing, I guess I would say writing, 99, and there's a dash after the second 9, followed by the 7, 7 underneath, 6, 6, 9, 5. Because you are powerful beings, whether you feel this about yourselves or not, when you write this code, you will be sending some protons, electrons, neurons, and other types of energy whose names are pretty long and maybe not worthy of describing, simplify it and say the thought connection with the codes will sort of ring the doorbell. Yes, it will, he's saying. It will ring the doorbell with the light beings that are living within that galaxy. It may not ring all of the light beings' doorbells, but you'll get the message across that you're making an attempt to connect with them. And if I may, if you're going to choose to connect with any of the galaxies and the light forms that live within them, it is with purest intent. It might be your intent to say hello. So you could say, my intent is hello, and write the number code down. Some of you will hear a code back. And let me just pause on that. Some of you will hear a code telepathically being given back. Okay. I cannot speak for all light beings, all races, all galaxies, but rest assured, if you would, all the messages from these that we're going to be discussing in our teaching are those in the light. So, much more about this. This is why, how fascinating in some ways I feel it could be to humanly, with harmonic codes, and then we'll talk about the tone that goes with this particular universe, to kind of expand yourself into your greater power and bring that and from that particular galaxy. Again, this is a big family reunion, Michael's saying. So if you do not hear anything back, or if you do hear something back, it will be something lovingly communicated. It might be a hello back. It might be thank you. But it will be something based from the heart of the Creator in light. I do not feel as though anyone needs to have any fear that you need to, let's say, protect oneself before the study of the stars and the planets and the asteroids, the cosmic dust. From the study and the exploration of the galaxies that we're sharing. Even if you ever remember the name, let's say it's a year from now, and you've long forgotten the name of the universe of Damascus, but you remember traits and characteristics and how connecting with these other galaxies can enrich your personal world, and they can enrich your world in many ways. The animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the rock kingdom, and you say, well, I've got enough to do. Why do I need to study this? And it's certainly not a need. Some of you will not. Nothing is ever a need unless one makes it a need. But if you are here listening, one is going to presume that you have a heart that does wish to extend itself into other galaxies, and so it's a way to do so. So let me state this again, Michael saying, I do not feel one of you that may be listening needs, when you choose to connect with these galaxies and the light beings that reside upon them, need to find all sorts of protection tools. There's nothing to protect one from. Not in the galaxies we're going to be speaking of. In fact, most of the universes here, they're quite responsible for the birth of your own particular world, you might say, and many things in it in many different ways. Certain. If I could, let me make a clear point, if I may, about this particular galaxy that we're starting off with, Astellas. As I come to see it, the frequency of Austelis's primary contribution to your earth world, as I come to see it, has to do with raising the frequency of the soil, of the ground, of the soil, of the ground of your mother. And it was done, the process there was started thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, near the birth of all the planetary systems, when the God Infinite Mind said, felt, instructed that not only did this particular galaxy help with the soil on Earth, but it also helped replenish some of the dying soil systems in some of these other galaxies. So it's not as though this is a one-way, just like a family reunion, it's not as though we're only talking about Austelis to Earth. Austelis's relationship and how they interrelate, how these universes relate to one another, they all have a mind intelligence. So mind intelligence of Orion has contributed to Damascus's well-being, and Jupiterian mind consciousness has assisted in the Celestine development. So think of these as helping hands and helping family members. Again, it's not all the universes to Earth. They all generally, normally, if a galaxy, again, I'm just picking one to lay a foundation, but if the primary benefit, or let's call it a primary gift of Austelis to not only Earth, but to some of these other universes that we're going to be studying, has to do with the way that they planted soil. And you'd say, well, okay, wait, stop right there, Angel. How can this be? God force, infinite mind, source energy, Allah. Allah made all. And I'd say, well, to whom do you think, where do you think the stars and the planets were born? So right now, as I say, this is a study of astrology, astronomy combined. So in other words, what I'm sharing is not defaming God's source. If anything, I hope I'm starting to open your eyes and ears to the magnificence and the infinite love of the infinite mind. So, soil. What exactly? Well, let's go back to this, if I can, just another moment. Austelis's contribution, as I come to see it, again, had to do with the soil. As I see it, in many ways, the soil on your Mother Earth was, when the Earth was first born, the Earth had soil that was huge, huge particles. It's not like you might say now. Like if you go out to any field and you go look at, or you dig your hands, or you see the soil itself through some rocks. In the very first, earliest stages of your Earth's development, the soil was almost like big, huge chunks. So if you can imagine big, huge chunks, those huge chunks were softened so that life could be supported here. And the main contributor for that were the light beings in the universe or galaxy of Austelis. So without their loving purpose, connection, where did they get their purpose? God, Allah, mind, whatever word we're calling for the Creator. That's where they got their instruction. So the soil, as I come to know it on your planet, was very dense. It was very large. the soil particles themselves, not conducive, certainly, for the growth of anything. So a call was made, you might say, a call was made out to the universes, all the systems, God, force, mind, who would like to involve themselves in helping shape the soil on this planet so that the planet does become habitable. So the request was made for all the universes, and some declined. Some thought the task was too difficult. Some universes said, we will, and so many of them came together. So to be a very literal guide in your teaching, Oculus, frequency, Oculus, the light beings from Oculus, they had help. But largely it was, you need normally one in command, let's say one leader, and they chose with careful deliberation, you might say, what other planetary systems for the advancing in the intelligence and the knowing that they had to assist them. It's not a whole lot different if your minds are thinking like you're going to remodel your kitchen. And you might say, well, I have a main contractor doing this and this and this, but he's subcontracting something out. So in your mind, it's very much kind of like this, as I see it, to simplify things a bit. So the soil back to planet Earth was very dense. It was not conducive for any life force energy to be on about it until our friends, so that's the word I'd like to say, the labeling, the friends of your multidimensional beingness, happily took up the assignment of assisting with that. Some of you are wondering, well, how did they do that? They certainly had, and still have, spaceship equivalency, you might say, to come to the planet, land on the planet, actually sort of infuse the soil with a very high level, what would be the word that's understandable? In your visual mind, it was like an injection. If something gets injected with something, or let's say like a sponge that's rock hard, that might be a good visual. So the soil on Earth was so dense and uninhabitable for growth. The light beings from this particular dimension, with the technology that they still possess, sort of like added water to a sponge, so that your soil on your Earth could contain. Without the ability to contain, just imagine, like a concrete block. What happens when it's raining to a concrete block? Nothing gets absorbed. So their contribution to your to Earth's development was very large, is very large, because they're still working here, which might bring up some further sharing, that there are many light races here on Earth continuing to do the work that they would have done thousands of years ago. They're not all here. They're not all needed here, but they all are needed somewhere. Everything is in constant creation. Stars are born, stars die. Planets are born, planets can diminish and die. Again, I am not professing to take the place of God, Creator, Mind, Infinite Source, so I hope your hearts aren't viewing me as such. In fact, I only get my papers from higher beings than myself. but there were more universes than 66 in the moment of creation. Some of them imploded almost immediately because the environment was too hostile, and they just couldn't even exist in the cosmos. So for planets, stars, and all the like, asteroids, and all the things that make up different galaxies and universes, it's sort of like natural selection in a way, that more were birthed than exist now. If some of you, I suppose I should address the idea about some of you hearing about dying planets and the sun dying. I've heard that many times, and different things about this nature. So entire universes generally do not die, but the systems that make up the universes can. So to carry on, he's saying, their main contribution, as I said, was to allow the soil on Earth to be habitable, sustainable, growable. I could make another point. There was another universe, another family member, Michael's saying, in the analogy that he's using. This is all a family reunion, that helped regulate temperature on Earth. And that particular galaxy, as I come to see it, was Persephone. So I know we're not fully finished with Austerlitz, but to help link these thoughts in your mind, Persephone's and the consciousness of Persephone, their contribution to Earth was to help regulate her temperature. Because as I've come to know it, the temperature on Earth upon creation, some of you might have even studied this in high school textbooks about what really happened to the dinosaurs and so on. So there is some on Earth about temperature having changed on Earth. It's still going on now in your world, if you know anything about global warming. So back to sort of earlier times of almost pre-birth of these universes, it was Persephone's light forces that helped regulate the temperature on Earth. This is partly why I'm choosing these first 10 significant galaxies, because they all contributed significantly, as I've been taught, to the evolution of your Earth. Again, so initially, as I come to see it, Persephone, the temperature on Earth, some of you may be wondering, was it cold, Michael? Was it too hot, Angel? How was it? And I'd say it was so molten hot. So molten hot that, again, nothing inhabitable could have lived on Earth without the primary, because then we all have helpers, they all had family members helping, but significantly from the collective consciousness of Persephone. You might be wondering, well, Michael, then all of these 10 galaxies, how many other things with the birth of Earth weren't right? And I'd say, well, it's not exactly like that. We'll get to that when we get to that. It's not as though there were 10 different kind of things wrong, quote, wrong with Earth in the moment of her birth. Some of you may be questioning even what I'm saying about the birth of this and the birth of that. Wasn't everything birthed at once? You might be asking. And the answer to that is yes and no. To confuse your minds, but it's a yes and a no. Because birthing is a process. So being very literal, was there one moment of a boom where everything in creation was suddenly there? Yes. Was there a time that other galaxies were added later? Yes. Can you imagine if in one moment there's darkness, blankness, and then in the next moment, so many magnificent universes and galaxies with all of their beautiful and wonderful and uniqueness, and even those in the darkness, just beautiful in their darkness. There was something on Earth you call as evolution. Evolution. So that's my reason for the no part. The yes part, stated Michael saying, the no part is because evolutionary things went on through the eons of time. Process, call it a process. So, if your minds and hearts are understanding some things about why one might even want to look for, you say, well, Michael, can I see this galaxy? Can I see this universe through a telescope? I'd like to see them in the sky. Michael's saying, good luck with that unless you get a neutron telescope. He's saying a neutron telescope. Most of these universes are not going to be seen aided or unaided. There will be a time in the not-so-distant future that when Earthlings become more receptive to the idea that traveling to different planes of existence is going to become a reality, and I don't mean 5,000 years from now. There is, of course, already interstellar travel that's been going on, but this will grow. This is why we feel as though it may not be your cup of tea, Michael's saying, where you are in your life to understand what we're sharing here. We hope to some degree, at least we open your mind, but it will become more meaningful, we feel, we all the archangels, we all the ascended masters, to your children or your children's children, depending on who's listening, he's saying, and future generations, because there will be more travel of the body, and so there will be a time, and technology will advance, so that there will be a time that those of you, the souls on earth, will be able to see, aided, what the arrangement of the stars and the planets and what I'm calling the asteroid-like, all the particles that make up a galaxy. You know, the galaxy, if you want to make the analogy of a galaxy to the physical body, there's many components to your physical body. So not all galaxies that we're going to be describing here have the same number of components. The majority of them will still have bones and skin, but they'll vary. They'll vary in their beautifulness, in their glory. They will vary. Just like your own universe varies. In the planetary planets that you can see, Saturn, Jupiter, the Moon, the Sun, Mars, Uranus, and so on. So, Michael's saying, back to the color of these planets. I've got a little sidetracked, he's saying. So, back to the colors of the 6 planets that are making up the smile in your minds. That yellowish green color, very beautiful. It may not sound as though it's beautiful, but those planets are in your mind. If you wanted to visualize or draw or sketch, maybe, hopefully one day this will be brought to not only auditory knowledge, but visual knowledge. The planets are kind of half and half. Let's just use for simplicity a circle. They're far more elaborate than that, but the circles then would be half green, half yellow. Half green, half yellow. Half green, half yellow. Okay? They fall outside of a color spectrum that's not exactly known or seen by most people's eyes on Earth, but nevertheless, for kind of simplicity again, imagine a very most beautiful green in your mind and the most beautiful yellow that you could possibly imagine, and you'll be close to visually placing yourself. I feel as though the more I can sort of make these galaxies seem real to you, the more you can place yourself there. The other 3 planets, as I see them, of that particular galaxy we're talking about, they're all the same color. They're not the same green and yellow, but the colors that these 3 are, making all the 6 planets, are a red and a purple, half and half. Half red, half purple, half red, half purple, half red, half purple again, from a color spectrum that's a little bit different than the light spectrum most commonly known and seen through your own eyes. Again, for now, just imagine something almost neon, beauty beyond beauty, glistening beyond glistening. Not that your Mother Earth isn't glistening in her own way, just trying to describe again what the outward colors of these planets might be, because there will be a day, not too far in the future, where technology will advance on Earth with the help of light beings of more technologically advanced that are already here, that it will allow souls on Earth to see this system, to see the system themselves. Very much like if you took a home telescope out and you're looking for this, that, or the other. Or you look up and you see the moon. So this is an exciting time that you're living in. And it will remain exciting as we see it forever, for eons of time. An eon, does anyone know how long an eon is? Michael's asking. An eon supersedes time. In fact, an eon in your conscious mind, that just means a long time. Long time. Long time. So there will be, as I say, a wonderful sort of kaboom moment. He's saying kaboom, when a sound very much like that is globally heard all over your world, where thousands of souls will look up and wonder what the heck, what the kaboom was about. And do you know what happens, souls, when 500,000 people look up to the stars in the sky at the same time? Waves and waves and waves and waves and waves of energy, not fear-based. I see very little fear when this occurs. They'll emanate from your outer energy bodies. Energy normally isn't contained. It likes to spiral around. What will cause the kaboom? Some of you may have already sort of anticipated or discovered or know about this kaboom. It's going to be the birth of another galaxy. Again, as I share things with us, nothing is ever static. Creation, the creator, is constantly creating. So you say, well, okay, well, we know that they've just found another planet, and the scientists on Earth have found another, solar system, the second sun, and we know these things are occurring. Why don't we hear a kaboom with them, Angel? And I'd say partly that's because the sound barrier is going to be different when this occurs, and it doesn't mean that anyone's ears will be harmed by this. It's really, when it comes to pass, I hope many of you will be viewing this as a cause of great, great, great celebration. That a new galaxy's been born. You might say, well, Angel, okay, does it mean these 66 universes then is going to change to 67? And my answer to you is likely so, yes. Likely so, yes. And then maybe your minds are wondering, well, okay, what about the next birth? Is that going to be a kaboom? Or certainly, angels, some of us will be frightened when we hear a big kaboom and we're all looking up, wondering what it is. I'd say, I don't feel this way to be so. The kaboom also is not just the birth of another galaxy, but it's what we would call divine perspective. And for those of you that would like some more information about this, in the cosmic world, divine perspection means that the last little bit of darkness that may exist in some of the galaxies that we may not be individually examining will be infused with pure love. That's mainly when that sound comes to your planet. Stand there, look up, and applaud. Smile. Hug your brother. Hug your sister. Hug your children. Because any remaining particle that falls outside of pure love resonance will be totally enfolded back into her. So, is this where your teaching would like to end, Michael? We'll see if there are questions. Yes, I think for now, not too over. So, April, if you want to see if anyone's written in. If not, we'll call this chapter 2.
We do have a couple of questions. First of all, Katie wants to know, can we see Astrolus, and if I mispronounce these, please forgive me, can we see Astrolus in our sky, or is there a constellation or star that we can see that would indicate the direction it's in?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Michael, where might they look if it's not seen and visible at this time? To the east, he says, look to the east, due east as it's called on your planet, due east, and look up to the star that you might see with aided. You'll need to be aided. You'll need an aid, Michael's saying, to see the tiniest star, due east, and it has a tendency to flicker. You say, well, all stars do, don't they? And I'd say some do, some don't. This particular star has a yellow cast or a ring around it that with an aid, I guess he means telescope, due east, the star that would point one closest to this particular galaxy twinkles, and it has yellow around it. It's not a star that I see that's even named in your world, so you'll need to look for it carefully and recognize it by the yellowish halo around it, he's saying. Due east. That would be my direction, he's saying.
Great. We've got another question. Katie also wants to know, does the Jupiterian galaxy correspond in some way to the planet Jupiter, or is that maybe an anchor for that galaxy?
Okay, thanks so very much for that thoughtful question. Michael, what's your answer about that, please? He says she could be the teacher. I welcome that. Yes, does it have Jupiter's frequency? Yes, but it's an anchor. So Jupiter, the planet Jupiter itself, is, I would like you to think of Jupiter as a satellite. And the planet Jupiter is a satellite for the Jupiterian galaxy. So again, this galaxy is further light years away, but you're very much on point, he's saying, if you want to think about Jupiter as an anchor.
And then one other question. If we feel particularly drawn to a constellation, does that mean that, well, this person said that they feel protected somehow by, like, the Orion constellation. Does that mean they are protected by that constellation, or perhaps there are beings from that galaxy that there's an unknown relationship to?
Okay, thanks again for that. Michael, what's your counsel there, please? Okay, I'm hearing he's saying a little of both, a little of all what you're saying. So many of you are sort of drawn to certain things. Many of you, as we might have shared this discussion before, many of you cannot call your soul roots as being on the earth plane. They originated from other star systems. Maybe that's a word that I haven't used much in this teaching here today, but it does apply to what you're asking, and it is a sort of a way to look about what we're describing as another reason why I feel as though it's going to be useful for many of you to kind of hopefully sort of study become more familiar about what we're talking, because many of these systems or galaxies were your soul homes, are your soul homes. That's why so many, let's say star seeds and enlightened ones, many of the crystalline children, many of the indigo young adults and so on, they may feel like they don't belong. So it's also for your benefit or their benefit, so you know that you have homes. It's a soul longing that exists in some, by the way. We call it a soul longing, wanting to go home. So knowing that you can connect with these, and really first just knowing that the universes exist, knowing what relation they have to one another and to Earth, hopefully we're sorting those of you that might be either led to look at a constellation or drawn or have these feelings, always looking up to the stars, other than their just beautiful grandeur, but with a sense of longing and wondering. So it's to support you too. That's partly why when I suggested that the study of these systems in a slightly different way will help support you for your own healing. This is certainly a main portion of how I view this teaching. So if you, dear one, are called to that interstellar region, whether it's a belt of stars or whether it's some satellites or whether it's a planet itself or a collection of planets, most of the time we could say to you that you have soul, at bare minimum, soul pieces from that particular galaxy, or that was your original birth. Now, this probably opens up a whole lot of questions. So, does it matter if I'm from Damascus? Again, there's nothing separate. Where are you from? You were born of love. That's what I would say, first of all, to everyone. And hopefully I've made this idea in your mind that it's a family. That's why Michael said, that's why I say it's a family. So some of you, as she's witnessing, have a feeling. Others of you may not. It's all fine and well, even if you don't have a sort of longing to return or something of that nature. You're carrying pieces of that consciousness within you, and it's sort of, as you awaken, you'll be sort of bearing fruit. I would say it this way. You will be bearing fruit of your soul. Not everyone will be awakening at the same time, of course. So in some way, some souls on the earth plane have had a different pattern of incarnation. Let me make that statement to kind of frame things in for us. So some have cycled from heaven to earth, heaven to earth, heaven to earth. Others have had a different cycle. Let me just give an example of another cycle. Some have cycled through Orion, spent some time in the Jupiterian regions for further soul learning, and then decided to come to Earth to help Mother Earth, rise up. And this is kind of primarily some teaching about Well, where's the Palladian galaxy? Why isn't that in here? I'd say I'm going to get to that after number 10, he's saying. So it makes no difference whether it's Palladian or Herculon. Any birth in any one of these galaxies, you're a star seed. If your soul pieces came from one of these galaxies, again including the Palladians, that will be number 11, and there's a reason for me asking that it be made number 11 just in my sharing, as I've been asked, to transmute disharmony on Earth. That's what a star seed is. Someone who came from the Herculean, Palladian, some of these other galaxies for the purpose of transmuting disharmony on Earth. How you're choosing to transmute it is as individual as you are. But I would say to some of you that are listening, again, try to convince you that there's some value in what Michael's saying, sharing here, is that if you don't have your awakening moment, if you're not in alignment in doing what you came here to do, then I'd say take up a task and make whatever task it is. If it's moved you for a long time since you were a young girl to get involved in conservancy, that's probably a frequency of Hilarion. Hilarion main contribution to Mother Earth was conservancy, conservation. Okay? So just know that there's, in every moment of every breath, every soul has choices to make. And the choices for many star seeds is, how can I do what I came here to do? Pardon me. And are you doing it? Many of you already are. Some of you, I would say, too, if I may make a point here, Michael's saying, when we talk about souls that come in with a higher vibrational nature, if your soul journey has been from one of these 10 and 11, including Palladian galaxies, you entered in this moment of birth with a higher frequency. How could it be any other way, really? Again, Mother Earth fell outside of grace for just a moment in time, and now she's sort of back in her mighty glory. But so if some of you that might be listening feel as though you have something to do, you're unsettled, and you don't know what to do, I'd say take any action that's going to help you feel more connected to your heart, that will serve you and it will serve your fellow man. Might be fellow animal, might be fellow ocean, particle of the ocean, conservancy, might be growth, in any and all ways. Move into that. If it's been nagging at the back of your minds for some of your lives, I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like I was floating. I thought nobody understood me. These can be signs, not always, but again, these can be indicators that your soul origin was not totally and fully of the earth, you might say. So again, if as we move forward in this discovery together, friends, if you think about these universes as your long-lost cousins, I think we'll get along fabulously. At least I hope we do.
May we ask one more question?
Okay, sure.
Dawn has asked, do the light beings of these galaxies appear different from us? Particularly, she mentioned Osiris. I'm sorry, I've got that wrong.
Osiris. You mean the one we're talking about today?
Yeah. Do they appear different from us, and if so, in what way?
Okay, yes, thank you. Michael's saying, yes, they do appear different from your physical bodies. I'd like to do a little bit of describing for you and then continue that when we continue more, not to overwhelm anyone, just to enrich us. But the physical description of the light beings of this universe that I'm choosing to begin with, maybe height matters to you, or to many of you. So their height, as I see it, is about and I'm using Earth, measures, he's saying, are about 3 feet 1, Michael's saying, to 4 feet 11. Not very tall by some standards, by Earth standards. So that's the height of the light beings as I see them from this particular galaxy that we've been describing. They have a head that's similar to yours. Their bodies are similar to Earth. They're sort of, I would still call them a humanoid form. Their skin is very soft. It's almost like the softest of anything you might imagine, or the softest blanket, the softest leather, although I don't really like to use that image of leather, Michael's saying. So, but it's very soft. They do not, let's say, age like human beings do. Some other light races that we'll be describing in some of these other galaxies, they do have an aging process that is similar to Earth. I do feel as though some of you might find it interesting to know that because Mother Earth, when the sonic, let's call it a sonic boom, when the sonic boom occurs and total love is in all the multi-galaxies that exist, the densities, in other words, human beings age in such a way or have aged in such a way because of density. No other reason. Density. So as the density is lifted by everything being in total cohesion, and you'd say, well, okay, Michael, you're stepping on something I don't really agree with, because I know if I tell my cells that I'm 20 years younger, and I know if I tell my cells that I'm a beautiful, loving being, that I'm joy-filled, that I'm connected to love, that I can convince my cells so they do not age. And I'd say, yes, some of this is going on now. I'm not talking about technology that is freezing. I'm just talking about, you've asked about a description of this particular light race, but I would like to share the idea that when the sonic boom is heard, the way human beings age will not be the same as globally your planet has aged for hundreds of years. In fact, the lifespan won't even be the same. The lifespan and the way the human body might sort of, let's say, decay and age came from density, dense thinking, dense frequency, dense, being outside of light. Being outside of light. So their height, they're very humanoid looking. They have a different reproductive system than human beings. They have what you might call technology developed because of who they are and what they serve, to be the main light race again that came to make these huge dense blocks of soil be like a sponge to support life on Earth. So how did they do this? They didn't necessarily have let's say an instrument that they sort of zapped them with. Michael's saying, okay, they did it all with their minds. They did it all with their minds. Okay. So some commentary about their mind development. Okay, they used advanced technology to come to Earth for this purpose, but once here, they used the power of their mind to change energy, and they did it in such a way that it was almost done instantaneously. So their skin is smooth. The color can range from a pale green to sort of a pale peach color, I guess I would say, Michael's saying. And if your hearts and minds, do they have hair? Yes, they have some hair, but not as much as human beings. They do walk upright. I say humanoids walk upright, so unless we get into some of the other races that are not of that type, we would describe them, but they walk upright. And they have, of course, the ability to sort of see through things. They have telescopic vision, you might say, see through objects, which is a wonderful sort of tool. If you can imagine, if you, in the, like Michael's saying, X-ray vision, like in the storybooks and the fantasy books, that's a term I guess I'd use to simplify it, but they have the same capability. Some of them choose to wear something that looks like clothing, but it's not really clothing, kind of like a shield. Again, it's like at times some of them choose to adorn themselves like human beings do. So at times they adorn themselves. Some of the adorning has to do with rank and order. Some of it is personal in nature. It's by that rank and order, I would like to make the point that there's no social classes. I didn't mean that. Some certainly are in a position to be a commander or something of that nature by their own intelligence, contribution, but there's no social status. In fact, that's a reality that will be changing and shifting on your own plane of existence. So they don't have social status. None of the galaxies do. If they have distinctions between themselves, it's based upon other things than what you on Earth might say a social class.